welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. And today's episode is brought to you by Similary Breast Pumps. Comfortable pumping sessions should be the norm, not the exception. And you can have that with the Similary S6 Series Gentle Flow technology. And we will hear more from our sponsor later. But you can head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com and check out our website where you'll find all of our sponsors. And if you ever need anything, see if you can give them your business because they make this podcast possible. And at the top of the show notes under this episode, wherever you're listening from, you'll find a link to our Patreon. And we would love to see you over there sharing in all of our original content and our Zoom Hangouts every month and our Revolution Parenting episodes and all of the things that we're doing there. And we're still hosting our ongoing giveaway for people who leave reviews around the internet, whether it's written or stars or whatever your app allows. Send a screenshot along with your address to badassbreastfeedingpodcast@gmail.com. And we'll send you a goodie bag of stickers and thank you for nursing in public cards that are really fun to pass around your community. And people are doing it. I feel like we need to remind people every once in a while, like people do send in the reviews and we do send goodie bags. So you won't be the only one.
No, I have some to send out this week, actually.
So send yours along and get your goods. And I think now we have our review of the week.
As a first-time mom, I had no idea where to get information about taking care of baby after birth. Thankfully, I found this podcast shortly after my son was born. Now I have been exclusively breastfeeding for 6 months, and I'm glad I stuck with it. This podcast is a great resource for knowledge and support. It has helped me gain confidence with nursing in public and trusting my gut and my body to know how to care for my growing boy. Oh, congratulations on getting to 6 months. That's a big milestone.
Yes.
And I know how that feels because I remember like when my first son was born and he was brand new. And I remember feeling like, oh my God, I got to do this for like a year. Are you kidding me? And then you get to 6 months and you're like, okay, I can do this. You know, like it feels so overwhelming in the beginning.
Totally.
To think about how long you're breastfeeding for. And it does help you to set those little milestones. Can really be helpful. But congratulations to you and thank you for listening. And we've had a lot of people that wrote in or that have written in with their reviews and said that like nursing in public, they're more confident now. So I'm really glad that people find that confidence with us. I really feel good about that.
Yeah. I mean, and that makes such a big difference to the whole entire world because people then get to see breastfeeding. Either people that are going to breastfeed or who did breastfeed or just, men or kids, seeing that this is a normal thing that goes on in the world.
Yeah, it's so important. And it makes your breastfeeding a lot easier. That way you're not like, oh my God, I can't leave the house or I only can be gone for like an hour. I have to be back. Like now it gives you some freedom too, to be able to go and just breastfeed wherever you and your baby are. So awesome. It's fantastic. And I feel like today we're going to talk about some cool stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So we got an email from a listener who was talking about breastfeeding her daughter who was diagnosed with autism spectrum condition, formerly known as Asperger's syndrome. And she sent us a really, really beautiful email, and we decided we needed to do a whole episode on this email. And then we got some input from people who also might be breastfeeding neurodivergent, as we say it, to children, or who may have some neurospiciness themselves.
I like how you made that neurospiciness.
I didn't make that up. But
no,
I did not make that up.
Oh, I thought you did.
That's a thing. No, it's a thing to talk about people who are just a little neurodivergent, neurospicy.
I was thinking about this. Like my whole house is. Yeah. I feel like, including my dog. Like we're all got neuro. Like you're all I'm sensory, my husband's ADD, two of my boys are on the spectrum. Like we're totally a neurodivergent house. I think if you really think about it, what it is and what it encompasses, it's so common. It is
It
so,
is.
so common.
It is. And we can, when you're talking about this kind of thing, you don't have to be talking about a specific diagnosis. You can be. There's a lot of people diagnosed with ADHD. Exley is dyslexic. People have, other learning disabilities, other diagnoses. But basically, neurodivergent is somebody's brain who processes things a little differently than, say, the average person of their age group. That's a really broad thing that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And we want it to be broad because we want people who feel like they fall into this category. And this is up to you. If you feel like you're a little neurospicy or a lot neurospicy, that's you. That's not like somebody's like, well, no, you don't have this particular diagnosis. And it's you get to decide if this is you. And hopefully sharing some of these experiences today and some tips and tricks or whatever can help people feel a little less alone.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big push. Go ahead.
Maybe it'll make you feel like, oh my gosh, this is why I feel like I do.
Yes. I would be stuck because I remember going through this with Jack when he was little and learning what sensory processing disorder was and really feeling like he was struggling with that. Learning about that, I learned so much about myself. And I was like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
This is probably what I was going through when I was in, whatever school or, when this kind of thing was happening and I felt really different. And, now we have like words and language for this and shared experiences where, I just saw a meme. It was so funny. Everybody knows I live through memes. And it was a picture of, well, first it said, Grandpa. Grandpa says, they didn't have autism back in my day. And then it was like Grandpa, and that was like it showed his drawer of like all his different sized wires. Like he had just different sized like little wires that he was like had organized.
Oh my God.
Like, just like this kind of quirky little thing where it was like, okay, Grandpa.
Yeah.
All right.
Grandpa's
whatever
autistic. Yeah.
Right. He might be. So now we have just all of this, we have so much more access and knowledge about this stuff because it's, there is a big push out there for this. You're hearing so much more about neurodivergentness. Is that a word? And, these different diagnoses that now we get to try to help people, adjust a little to their world and make them feel a little more comfortable. So anyway, why don't I read the email?
Yeah, let's read the email.
Okay. It's kind of long, but it's so nice. I'm a longtime fan and supporter from Warsaw, Poland. Shout out to Poland. I first came across your podcast in July 2021, just 2 weeks into my motherhood journey with my daughter, Natalia. My breastfeeding was going well, though I didn't realize at the time, and I was extremely anxious about my supply, weight gain, feeding duration, my diet, having coffee, and basically everything else. I loved your work instantly. You became my village, my people, the ones who would always support me, understand my concerns, and give balanced, science-informed answers to virtually any question I had. I would walk with my baby in her stroller for hours, since she only slept during walks. Listening to episode after episode, I laughed, cried, and learned with you. You gave me the confidence to keep going and made me bulletproof to all the nonsensical comments and unwanted advice that kept coming my way. You helped me achieve and exceed my breastfeeding goals until there were no more goals, just enjoying the journey. It's been over 3.5 years, and our breastfeeding journey is still going strong. Last year, my daughter was diagnosed with autism spectrum condition, formerly known as Asperger's syndrome. Without going into too much detail with the diagnosis, though difficult to accept at first, was a blessing. It helped us understand her better, gave her the space to develop in her own unique neurodivergent way and allowed us to provide the right support where needed. And she is thriving, surprising us and everyone around her with her intellect, vocabulary, emotional maturity, and independence. I don't have any hard evidence on whether nursing has played a role in her development, but I do know for sure that it has helped us build a strong, secure attachment and has allowed me to meet her needs in ways that weren't always obvious. It took us a while to truly understand her, and as she often expresses emotions in unconventional ways, fear and panic may present as rage and aggression, joy and excitement as hand flapping, etc. I imagine she must have felt confused and maybe even abandoned at times before we put the work in to understand her. But in this one area, we have always understood each other perfectly. She could always come to my breast and have her needs met. I receive a lot of comments about still nursing my daughter, especially given her autism diagnosis, and I've been pressured to wean by pediatricians, psychiatrists, and psychologists, which I appreciate their expertise. While I appreciate their expertise, none of this advice seems to be evidence-based. It feels rooted in prejudice and stereotypes instead. As usual, the mother is the first to be blamed and the last to be heard. So I'm turning to you, my breastfeeding village. Once again, seeking understanding and maybe some balanced, data-based advice. I'd love for you to consider discussing breastfeeding and weaning neurodivergent children in one of your episodes. I know this is a niche within niche, since by the time most children are diagnosed, the vast majority have been long weaned. But with the average age of diagnosis gradually decreasing due to improved diagnostic tools and procedures, and with breastfeeding durations increasing in some areas and communities, maybe these two worlds will intersect more often in the future, and maybe we can learn something new from that intersection. Thank you again for your wonderful work and for supporting all breastfeeding and chest feeding people around the world. Wishing you all the best. Okay, first of all, this has nothing to do with anything, but this person's English is stunning.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, this is like the most beautifully written thing ever. And I have to assume that English isn't her first language. I just have to assume that because I'm looking at her name and I think she's Polish, not just in Poland, but a Polish person. Anyway, that is besides the point. But having lived in other countries and seeing people, speaking English as a second language, this is beautiful. She should be a writer. Anyway, so this is what sparked our interest in this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much, I think there's more research coming out about it. But I remember when my son was diagnosed, my son's Asperger's as well. And then my other son is sensory processing and stuff like that. But I remember looking to see if there was a link between breastfeeding and autism as far as a beneficial link. Not a negative link. I know when people say a link,
it doesn't cause autism.
Right. Yeah. No, it doesn't cause autism.
That's not what we mean.
One of the things that I read when we were planning to do this episode was that some studies suggest a possible link between breastfeeding duration and reduced autism risk or symptom severity.
I mean, that makes so much sense.
When you think about oxytocin and the connectedness and the regulation that it caused, all of that stuff that you get from breastfeeding. So it really makes me wonder, would my kids have been a little bit more severe symptoms if they weren't breastfed? You just wonder, you just wonder.
Well, and she says she even talks about this in her email about how, and this is true with anybody, I think, with any child, I guess, but probably amplified with a child who is, neurodivergent, that they're expressing they might be expressing something in a way that's confusing to you. Like if they're afraid and they're acting rageful, you're like, I don't understand this. And you might be reacting to the rage instead of the fear. And she goes on to say, but in that breastfeeding situation, there's always understanding, there's always connection, there's always needs being met. And so having that time where things are rough, but then you also have this time just a
Mhm.
huge portion of your day that is just automatic safety and security and needs being met. And that's
Absolutely.
like, that's just so incredible.
It really is. It really is.
And I know people say like the diagnosis doesn't come until later, but I can't imagine like Jack. Jack was never officially diagnosed with sensory processing disorder, but he did get treated at occupational therapy for especially auditory. And he scored like off the scale with like oral stuff, but their way of doing it was, I was like, I'm not comfortable with this. He had to like kiss tomatoes and stuff. And I was like,
Oh, that's weird.
I'm sorry. No, he's just going to eat what he likes to eat and not eat what he doesn't like to eat. And I'm very proud to say at 13 years old, he is so adventurous now. He's like, I want to try that. I want to try this after having been such a picky eater. And I think it's because we just let him do whatever he needed to do with the food. But anyway, the auditory stuff was really interfering with his life. And so he was treated for that. And my whole point in saying, maybe there's a typical age where kids are diagnosed with these things, but there's signs, man. There's signs and there's struggles from a very young age. And I can't imagine meeting somebody who is like, oh, we were totally blindsided by this diagnosis. Like, no, you're seeking the diagnosis because you feel like there's something going on. And and you have this feeling, your child. And I, and breastfeeding was one of the things that, he could be triggered by any kind of noise, any loud noise. And he would be screaming bloody murder for like 20 minutes. Like he could not find his way back down. And nursing was always a thing. That was always a thing that we did and something that helped. And anyway, I'm blabbing. But yes.
No, it's totally, I could see that with Jack, like all the times that you said that he was more like fussier when he was a baby, didn't want to be put down, needed to be, kept with you and stuff like that. Like that is sensory overload.
Yes, he was always that highly sensitive kid. Yep. Always really highly sensitive until we were like, maybe this is even a little bit more than just that.
Yeah.
But I also asked the internet because I just think it's really important when people share each other's stories and can hear what goes on with other people.
But should we do a break before we get to our internet people?
Jesus Christ, we haven't even gotten to our internet stuff and it's already time for a break. All right. We'll do a quick break and then we gotta get reading.
I know.
All right. We'll be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by Similry Breast Pumps. Similry Breast Pumps help you personalize your breastfeeding journey. Comfortable pumping sessions should be the norm, not the exception. With the Similry S6 series gentle flow technology, your comfort comes first. With adjustable cycle speeds and suction strength in both modes that offer 85 setting combinations, you can fine-tune pumping sessions that works and feel best for you. A safe choice for everyone, all Similry pump parts and storage bags are phthalate, BPA, and BPS free. With a team of CLCs and free resources for families, Similry gives vital tools for a successful journey. And you can check out the entire line of Similry breast pumps at similrybreastpumps.com. And that Similry is spelled CIMILRE. breastpumps.com. And you can use code BADASS for 15% off. And speaking of neurodivergence and sensory overload and all of that, having a pump where you can do extremely precise settings could be helpful to you, since certain sensations might be absolutely unacceptable for your body. And that's talking about the parent, which we are going to get to as well. So like I said before, go to Badass Breastfeeding Podcast neurodivergent.com. Check out our sponsor page. Check the show notes under this episode for the direct link for Similarly breast pumps and for the promo code if you forget, badass, 15% off. And on our website, you can check out at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com. You'll find all of our other resources, and you can check out or fill out a form to get your very own one-on-one online lactation consultation with Dianne.
Yeah, we could do it.
All right, let's get to reading. So I asked the internet if they are breastfeeding any neurodivergent children. And our first comment says, my daughter stopped at age 5. It was the easiest way to help her regulate and got her to sleep really easily. After a couple of awful years, we were prescribed melatonin, and that's been a godsend. I went to a few La Leche League meetings, but they were only monthly with a 2-month gap over the summer, and I couldn't go once I went back to work at 6 months. Shared parental leave, we split it 50-50. NHS health visitors spent the entire time pushing formula. I actually wanted to wean before she started school, but I'm glad I didn't. We didn't know she was ND then, and I don't think it would have been good for her. ND being neurodivergent. And she says NHS, so I think she's in England.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Do you have something you want to say?
No, that was
no. Okay, I'm just going to read these. My middle son fed until he was 18 months old. The youngest fed until he was 3. It was always hard to get them to drink anything, and my youngest was and still is super fussy, so it was nice knowing that they were still getting what they needed from me. That's such a great point, because some of these kids are just super picky with what they're going to put into their mouth, and having that breast milk is just such a reliable source of nutrient-dense hydration, you know, when you're having those difficult days. All right. Such a great opportunity for co-regulation as the littles get older. And also thinking about how much neurodivergent people have one or more neurodivergent parents. So it's unique on both sides for a lot of breastfeeding parents and their nurslings. The last comment here is, did it until he was 3.5, the most healthy he was.
Then it's over. No, it's
no. So interestingly, I asked about neurodivergent children, and it is understandable that there were less comments of that because, as we were saying before, maybe diagnosis doesn't come later. Maybe children, babies are. I mean, as we know, it's very, I don't say rare, but it's not as common to see babies that are breastfeeding past like 6 months.
Right.
So you might not have this intersection. But when I asked about neurodivergent adults who are breastfeeding, then there were more comments. Because, I mean, I don't think I know an adult that's like, nah, I'm normal.
I know.
I handle things really well.
I remember when I first got together with Tom and I was telling him about my kids, and, both my boys had their diagnosis by then. And he was like, well, what constitutes normal anyway? Like, what is that? And it's like, it's so true, like what makes somebody normal? I don't know anybody that's normal. I don't think if you put it like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So what do they say?
I mean, and we're talking about the other word that we love is neurodiversity, right? It's just that everybody's brain works differently. It's just different. Maybe there is no normal and abnormal, normal outside of normal. It's just different.
Yeah.
Everyone's just different. Your brain just works differently than somebody else's brain. I will also say, I'll read these comments, but I mean, whatever. Everyone knows that I'm going to go off on my society thing every once in a while, but people will be like, "Oh my God, ADHD! I'm ADHD. I can't keep up with I have a friend who's just like, she's like, I definitely know I'm ADHD, and I'm not saying she's not, and I'm not saying nobody is. If you think you're ADHD, that's great, but also I refuse to take responsibility for society putting 9 million things on my plate. And me forgetting shit sometimes.
Right.
Like, I can't focus. I can't, I have got a million things to do. My brain is all over the place. It's difficult to concentrate. That is ADHD, sure, for some people. And for some people, that is living under capitalism and this isolated society that is doing this to us.
Right.
And maybe one and the same. I don't know. But I just wanted to add that in there. Is that I'm like, if I get like, I'm always like, it's not my fault. It's your fault. I will not take responsibility for this society that I live in. Anyway. All right, I'm going to read these. Okay, so now we're talking about adults. It allowed me to go down a rabbit hole of looking stuff up about long-term benefits for both mom and baby, as well as tips and tricks for myself. There's also sometimes a certain quality that comes with being neurodivergent, where if someone tells you can't do something, the harder you work to do it. My baby wouldn't latch in the hospital. It took us an excruciating 3 weeks, and the lactation consultant immediately gave us formula without telling us how it worked. Then scolded us for doing it wrong when we didn't know any better. I took that as you can't do that. You're too stupid to figure it out. So that made us try that much harder. And we figured out what worked for us. And we nursed for 27 months.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. The next comment is in all caps. No twiddling.
Oh.
She says, I was so overstimulated. Then as he got older, wanted to go to gymnastics, and I just wanted him to lay like a baby, even as a 3-year-old. One time he started humming a song, and I was so weirded out by the vibrations, I cut the nursing short. A lot of it was basically breastfeeding because breast is best, and I wanted the best for baby, so I just did it. There's so much of that, too, just pushing through the discomfort.
Yeah.
I did that.
Yeah, I did that, too.
All right, next comment. I am not officially diagnosed, but I have high suspicions since having my son, and learning to work through challenges such as extreme overstimulation has been tough. But I have been extremely interested in breastfeeding and biological norms for babies and their moms. This leads me to do training to do peer support.
Oh, good.
And Anna says, being HSP, highly sensitive person? Is that what that is?
Sensory processing, maybe?
Yeah. I was really positively stimulated by breastfeeding, and cutting it down with each child was a nightmare. I used to cry, and if it was up to me, I would never quit.
Oh.
All right. Ali says, done with my breastfeeding years now, but it was nearly 7 years between my 2 kids. Definitely a lot of time to indulge in reading. My first and longest lasting special interest. As somebody else said, I was overstimulated. I couldn't handle twiddling, and even the sweetest things like my elder child who would stroke the inside of my arm softly left me grouchy with enough repetition. My second child is, we know now, autistic and sensory seeking, and drove me up the wall with pulling on my skin, picking at scabs, trying to yank moles off of me, smacking me in the face, etc. I got more aversion near the end of our journey, and that contributed to when we called it quits on the process. But I made it long enough with both of us to feel good about it. Yeah, I can really relate to that.
Isn't that wild? Like, you look back on it and you're like, oh yeah, that's why they did what they were doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's wild. Mm-hmm.
Jack was like, even just yesterday, he was like, Mom, do you remember when I used to take all of my trucks and just scream and throw them in a pile in the middle of the room?
Oh my gosh.
Like, yeah, I remember that.
The memory that will not die.
Yeah, I know. You. Yeah. We were wondering what was wrong with you. Lisa says, neurospicy. I think it helped me sit and enjoy my children. The PDA allowed me to allow my children to feed to their time. It helped with our connections as I'm not affectionate normally. PDA. Oh. What's PDA?
I thought it was public displays of affection.
I know, but
that's what I always knew PDA. I don't know if it's talking about the same thing. Me and Abby are not up to date.
I know people use so many acronyms for diagnoses, and I'm wondering if it's but if you know, you know. If you don't, then whatever. Yeah. And I love this. Becky put a link to a group which you have to join. If this applies to you, it is called Autistic Breastfeeding, Chest Feeding, and Body Feeding Parents. So if you are autistic, on the spectrum, whatever, there is a breastfeeding group for you that somebody linked to. Now, I'm not a part of this group. I don't know anything about it. Somebody just linked it. So if you want to check it out, I'll put a link. We can put a link to it. If that seems like that would be a nice place for you to get some,
support.
Support.
Support. Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, few more comments. My ADHD had me forgetting to eat all day, even though my body was probably screaming at me for calories. I think I was getting maybe 800 calories a day for a little while, and it was not good. Yeah, that'll happen. You absolutely just forget to eat. And you feel like crap. And then it makes everything so much worse.
I know.
The next comment is, and it was really hard to reduce. It was really hard to reduce the anxiety because of the time blindness. It felt like after 5 minutes, it was already 2 hours. It was difficult to keep track of how many times they were breastfeeding during the day because I always forgot to record it. I was also feeling overloaded, overtouched very fast. I forgot to eat or drink water during the day, and I always wanted to be doing something else rather than breastfeeding, so the aversion was real. Both of my kids were breastfed for 8 months, and that was more than enough. Yeah, I mean, you gave 8 months of your time while struggling so much.
Yeah, struggling. I was going to say, very overstimulated and struggling. Yeah.
Forgetting to eat. Like 5 minutes feels like 2 hours. Nursing aversion. Ugh.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and you do what you can do. This person says, okay, so I know what this is written, but I don't know what it is. How do you say AUDHD?
No, I don't know how to.
I don't know how you say it. Anyway, was diagnosed after the birth of my third child. My first, I didn't attempt to feed. My second, I made it to 4 weeks. I had these horrible feelings of wanting to vomit when she latched. My third, I wanted to get to 6 weeks. I'm over 2 years in. I overcame DMER that subsided around 8 months. I also have to manage the fact that I don't like being touched a lot and have 3 children climbing on me constantly, and one of them always on the boob. Yes. Another comment, trying to keep an eye on his latch consistently while we first started was an Olympic sport as an adult with ADHD. And that's true because it's a really hard to focus, but that's another great reason to just breastfeed on demand. Just kind of default to that always latching on. And then if you're forgetting to record, if you're forgetting to pay attention, you don't need to record, by the way. But if you're forgetting to pay attention, it doesn't really matter because you're just latching them on.
You're just following your baby's cues. Yeah.
Okay, last comment. Luckily, my kid didn't latch well from day Luckily, my kid didn't latch well from day one with tongue ties and some minor breathing issues because I'm not sure I could have handled it with my breastfeeding goals. I got so touched out and overstimulated so easily, and it's only worse when I'm frustrated. Ended up exclusively pumping for just about 17 months, which was awesome because I could control when I pumped and how I pumped, and it wasn't just me having to feed her all the time. I ended up liking my manual pump a lot better than all my electric ones just because it felt like I had full control. Plus, it gave me something to focus on. I really only used the electric pumps at night when I wasn't fully awake anyway. That's a really lot of good information in there. If you're uncomfortable with your electric pump, try a hand pump. Which can give a different sensory feeling if that's bothering you.
But I like how she was like, I ended up pumping and that worked for me because I couldn't handle the rest. And that could be how people are feeling right now too.
Yeah. Well, so that's all the comments. And I really hope that provided some sense of community for you. And if you want to write in and share your story or just offer some, more experiences, whatever, send us an email, badassbreastfeedingpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, we'd love to hear it.
Yes. And thanks for listening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.